This is Hajime no Ippo, the podcast, and this is your host, Jacob. Episode 1, August 23, 2020 is the first day and inaugural episode of this podcast. We will be talking everything, your one-stop shop about Hajime no Ippo, from the anime to the manga to everything. This is our intro episode. I will be talking just about a little bit about my experience with this series and all that. If you don't know, Hajime no Ippo is a boxing manga written by George. I'm gonna butcher his last name, George Murakami, and it's just a story about a boy named Makinochi Ippo who, was a wimp, had no direction in life, helped his mother out on a fishing boat, living in Japan, and discovered boxing and his journey through boxing. This has been a long-running series. We are now up to chapter 1310. So this is a long-running series, and just my background about the series. I've been a fan for about 2 years, so there are probably more fans that are more experienced and have been following this series longer, but I fell in love with it ever since I saw the Super Eye Patch Wolf video about it and him describing everything. And boxing has always been something that's just always interested me, and always watching the fights with my parents and stuff, it's always been something that's interested me. And then but I'm a big nerd and I always liked manga and anime, and when I saw Ippo, it just was a series that just caught my attention. I watched episode through episode. I watched all 3 seasons at once. I think I binged it in like about 2 months time, and I just loved it, from the soundtrack to everything. The animation, even the gags, even though they're kind of immature, and Takamura is, a lot of dick jokes and stuff like that, but still, it's funny when it's done by them. So that's my thing. And then once the anime was done, I was like, I think I spent like a month, 2 months just like rewatching little clips on YouTube and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? I have to read the manga. I gotta know what's going on. I gotta see these big fights and all that. What happened next to Ippo? Before I even started watching the anime, I knew I was spoiled with the CTE spoiler, that he was diagnosed with CTE, and I just kind of was wondering how does the story lead to that and all that. So there's all that. So I've been reading everything. This podcast will heavily talk, at least weekly, the latest chapter, and then small retrospectives from each arc and all that, going back, and all that. So there's all that. Just to talk, Ippo is one of my favorite characters. Obviously, Takamura is a close second. With both those characters, I enjoy greatly. With Ippo just being, the one who you gotta work hard to achieve the dream, and Takamura kind of being the gifted genius that is always that's always like doesn't surprise you and pulls it out. And I think 2 of the best fights in Ippo. Well, Ippo has made the main focus, and most of his fights are great. But Takamura, his first 2 championship belts against Eagle and Hawk are some of the best ones, especially in the anime. It hit the feels and all the emotions, and I just really enjoyed those 2 fights. But not to say that I think Ippo and George Moriarty has just such a great way of building characters and all that. You have the one-shot person that Ippo's gonna fight in the ring, and he makes at least you care or see his point of view or his side of it before they get either wrecked by Ippo or Ippo wrecks them. And it's great in that aspect, and that's why I love, like, you can have he brings out a no-name fighter for Ippo to fight, and then you kind of just spend a couple chapters, or in the anime a couple episodes or 1 episode on that person. You kind of just see their side and all that, but other notable, so they're all great. Sendo-san is also amazing in that sense of with his rivalry and friendship with Ippo. which is also as great. But I think one of the characters that is least liked in the series that I arc, his rookie championship arc, I really liked, and how he is a great reflection of a different dynamic, but still similar to Ippo and Miyata's thing with his rivalry with Imane, and it's kind of seeing it from the not perfect side where Ippo has all these aspects of where he's gonna win most of the time, but Itagaki he doesn't have that, and even though he's gifted, he's totally has mental blocks and is like in this downward spiral and all that. So I think that's great, and I think what's gonna come with him, and hopefully Moriaki focuses on him on more, and him and the third Imani fight is gonna be something amazing, because that fight with him and Imani, I didn't expect him to win, and he just surprised me and all that. So all the characters are great, and I could be listing them off forever. And I think we'll do more retrospectives in the future. I just kind of wanted to talk some things about that. But moving on to the next section, I kind of just want to do a brief recap of chapter 1310. So this is the fight where we're introduced to, well, we're not introduced to, but this is the aftermath of the Sendo and Alf fight. So Sendo and Alf, very controversial fight. I've heard a lot of people, I've read a lot of people not liking it because, you know, Sendo looked like he got pretty wrecked by Alf in the first couple rounds, and then he makes that miracle comeback with the goading Alfredo Alf into the fight, into that counter. So now it looks like Sendo will eventually be fighting Ricardo Martinez, and that is something that has. But the fight ended the way the fight ended, and Sendo won. So we'll see. I'll save my opinions on that fight for a later recap. I do need to reread that section, that arc, just to see what happened. But overall, I think the Mexican journey arc for Ippo, which I'm calling it now, his trip to Mexico, is very big, and I think it's going to reignite. Whether it takes another 2-3 years for Ippo to actually get back in the ring, I do believe that this Mexico trip will get Ippo thinking so much more about how to train better and how to coach better, and just reinvigorate him about maybe pursuing the world. Whether that just shows him what it takes and all that. I think there hasn't been enough of Ippo, watching Alf antagonizing Ippo into wanting to join, right? So I think this is gonna be the first thing that kind of lights Ippo into thinking that he wants to get back. Watching what this main chapter was all about was Alfredo and his title defense match against the other featherweight champion from the other division, Billy McCullum. And before I forget, chapter 1310 is entitled "The First Swing," and I think this chapter, while also introducing who Ricardo Martinez's new opponent's gonna be, it brings up a lot. And I first I want to discuss Ippo. There's a lot of fan audience of him sort of just analyzing and explaining to the wrestler friend he made in Mexico about all this, analyzing and just feeling the aura of the ring and how about the match is gonna fight. So it's showing that Ippo is getting just more aware, and all this, he's getting smarter. Hopefully we're not going to see him face tank anymore. Hopefully he's going to be a much smarter fighter with that. And so there's a lot of analysis from there, but I think more is this is a big fight to see how is it gonna go. Is it gonna be just Ricardo kicking ass, being the unstoppable monster that he is, or is Billy McCullum actually going to be an actual, threat to him? Is this gonna at least ignite something in Ricardo? As we know, we haven't seen him fight much, and and when we saw him fight, at least a long fight in the anime and the manga with Date, um, he got whooped. There was no debating about this. He gave it his all. This was the one character that we saw, the first character that Ippo lost to. Basically, the hopes of the featherweight division of the Japanese people. The best of the best for what the Japanese saw, and he fought Date once and lost. And then that second fight, he had every trick in the book that he developed just to fight Ricardo, and he still got whooped. His career ended after that, and passed that baton to Ippo. Now Ippo supposedly passed it to Itagaki, but Itagaki has no chance of making it against Ricardo. And for now, Sendo doesn't have either. I don't even think Sendo has enough to, in my opinion, to last more than 2 or 3 rounds. It might be the same as Date, just getting whooped again, horribly. And, it seems kind of cliche if that's going to be the thing that brings Ippo back, Date getting wrecked. But, yeah, so we're finding out a little bit about this new challenger, Billy McCullum. He was the other division, I think the WBC, or I forget which division is which, but Billy McCullum was the champion in there, and he relinquished his title just to have a match with Ricardo, just so he can prove he's the strongest. Because as long as Ricardo Martinez is still number one, still the champion, no one's gonna ever recognize him as the strongest. Because with his 68 wins, 68 KOs, Ricardo is still the number one and still will foreseeably be number one. And unless you beat him in this manga, in this universe, you're not going to be considered number one in the featherweight division. That's how powerful, that's how mythologized Ricardo Martinez is. And you're sensing that Billy McCullum has that same, aspirations of being number one. So he would relinquish his title and all that just to get his chance to fight Ricardo. And, same thing with Alf. After losing twice, he still wanted that third match, and that's not going to happen anymore. Supposedly, Alf has now retired after losing to Sendo. And, that shows in itself. Ippo says, this is the unofficial unification bout between Billy McCullum and Ricardo Martinez. Interestingly, in the chapter, we see some character development for Ricardo, as he's feeling jealous. He's feeling jealous and feeling he's not giving honor to the ring because he can't unleash his full potential in the ring. There's an emptiness around him. He felt jealous about Sendo's and Alf's boxing match before him, because they literally gave it all and gave their all and gave a true showing of machismo and all this stuff to the boxing ring, really honoring the sport and all that, and how much they gave it all. And it seems like Ricardo doesn't have that. He too good that he can't just unleash it. He's just gonna jab and not take anyone seriously. And he alludes to, there's a slight thing that he says that, like, hopefully you can bring this out on me. So is he alluding to Sendo? Is he alluding to Ippo? Like, I find it hard to believe it's Ippo he's alluding to. He's seen a couple of his fights, and he's shown general interest in Ippo, but is that the case? Like, does he want a Japanese fighter? Does he feel like a Japanese fighter is going to be the one that brings out his all, in that, show, like, their undying, unwielding spirit, is going to be the thing that lets him unleash everything? Or more obviously, maybe he's just mentioning that Billy McCullum is going to be the one that will do this, will reach out. So I'm hoping that this is going to be a couple chapters long. Maybe this will pose a slight challenge to Ricardo. This is going to be, in my opinion, is the final boss of the anime. Um, for Ippo, where Ippo it's gonna bring his all out. He's gonna bring all of it to win the featherweight champion and become champion of the world, fighting against Ricardo. Whether that's the case, but we'll see. We'll see for sure. Um, people say that the last fight in Ippo is going to be a title match, Minyata versus Makinochi Ippo. I see that. I see that as a possibility, but I feel like Ippo and Minyata's first match was an unofficial gym fight. I think it's gonna end an unofficial gym fight as their third one after years of finishing their career together. So, and the chapter ends with Ricardo and Billy about squaring off and the bell about to ring. So we'll see. Next chapter, we'll see who will who who will who will win. Will this be a one chapter fight? Will this drag on a couple chapters? Hopefully it drags on a couple chapters. I just want to see more of Ricardo fighting. I want to see more of his skills, more of his tactics. I want to see Ippo analyze. I want to see Ippo take into account what world class, what number one, what the champions are. Is this going to be the thing that kind of shows him a new skill? Is he going to learn more about the jab? We'll see. So this is the end of the first episode of Hajime no Ippo, the podcast. So this is my first episode. I know it's rough. I know it's not the greatest. I'm working towards it. I will try doing this once a week, once every other week. We'll see how my time allots, but I do want to make this a ongoing project. Maybe also move on to YouTube videos and all that. But for now, I'll stick with the podcast. Since it's just simpler talking into a mic. Hoping to bring other people along as well. I will sooner or later set up a email address as well, so you can all email me questions and all that. But for now, thank you, and hopefully please return and listen to the next episode. Thank you, and have a great day.